What is up? This here LA in a minute, and I'm here at the Pico Union Plaza on the corner of Pico and Union in the Pico Union neighborhood. Probably the most historic neighborhood in all of Los Angeles, going back to its time as an indigenous village, and later where the Pobladores actually settled El Pueblo de Los Angeles. So Pico Union has a ton of history, and it's still a complex, fascinating, and important Los Angeles neighborhood. Let's get into it. Pico Union not only has a rich heritage, but a stunning modern-day tapestry with a history of cultures from Korea, Greece, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and pretty much anywhere else on the globe. I saw the Pico Union neighborhood described as a stunning time capsule of early Los Angeles, and I think that's really important. Take the Pico Union Project. This is a multi-faith cultural arts center, but it takes place in what is the oldest remaining synagogue building in Los Angeles. But thousands of years prior, the area known as Pico Union was advantageously situated as the only place where the LA River flows above ground throughout the entire year. And that provided ample flowering, herbs, and food resources, and thus it became a very important indigenous village called Guevaranga. Unfortunately, Guevaranga was destroyed in the middle of the 18th century by Spanish colonizers under the orders of King Carlos III and led by the De Anza expedition. Subsequently, the area that would become Pico Union was part of the early Pueblo de Los Angeles settlement in Spanish and Mexican California. The first homes in the area were built in the 1860s, when the area now known as Pico Union would have been considered the western edge of El Pueblo. Because it was the edge of the city, a cemetery was founded there, Rosedale Cemetery, in 1884, which became the first cemetery in Los Angeles open to all races and ethnicities. By 1887, the first electric railway in Los Angeles opened, and the first stop happened to be at Pico Heights, which would become Pico Union, and this was the first step towards the population boom in Los Angeles. The area became a fashionable suburb for wealthy families, and by the turn of the century, Pico Union was at the heart of the booming metropolis, with areas such as Alvarado Terrace and Bonnie Brae with rich architectural styles such as Victorian, Queen Anne, and Colonial Revival that today are at the core of these historic districts. In the 1920s, the composition of the area changed, and Pico Union became a destination for immigrants, many from Europe, Greeks, Norwegians, Swedes, and Russian Jews. In the 1950s, Pico Union really started taking on its current cultural makeup. Armenians, Koreans, African Americans, Colombian, Japanese, basically everybody that's in LA was represented in Pico Union. In the 1970s, large numbers of working-class Mexican immigrants started to settle in Pico Union, followed by Guatemalans, Hondurans, and Salvadoreños, many fleeing civil war or persecution. Now, part of Pico Union was officially designated the El Salvador Corridor in 2013, owing mainly to Mercado Salvadoreño, an open-air street market that started in Two Guys Plaza with a single coconut vendor outside of Banco Agricola, a Salvadorian bank. In the 80s and 90s, Banco Agricola was one of the few places in the city where Salvadorian immigrants could send money back to El Salvador, which at the time was in the throes of a violent civil war between guerrillas and the government. And in that El Salvador community corridor, you might see these signs for Departamento 15, or 15, which refers to the number of states in El Salvador. Well, technically, there's only 14 departamentos, but the notion is that Los Angeles is the 15th. So Pico Union today is rich, complex, and one of the most culturally important neighborhoods in all of Los Angeles. And it really is a stunning time capsule of early LA. So Pico Union has some of the deepest and most important history in all of Los Angeles. All right, LA, it's been a minute.